Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is kind of like a spin-off from a video that I filmed at the beginning of the year. That video was called If I Could Only Keep 10 Palettes. I had to choose 10 palettes in my entire collection and it was so much fun. I'll link that video below. But I recently saw two videos, one from Morgan Turner and then one from Mandy Lee. I'm going to link them in the description box below. I love both of their channels so much. Whenever their videos pop up in my subscription box, I click on them right away. And I actually had like two different binge watching sessions where I watched a ton of Mandy's videos, a ton of Morgan's videos. They're just really fun to watch and I think you guys will love them if you're not already subscribed. So I'll link their channels below. But Mandy filmed a video where she chose her top palette from 10 different brands, and then Morgan filmed a video where she chose one palette from a bunch of brands as well. So for my video, I went through my eyeshadow palette collection, and whenever there was a brand where I had multiple palettes from that brand, I picked one palette. If I had to get rid of the rest of them and only keep one, these are the ones that I would choose. So I think I have 10 different palettes from 10 brands to share with you guys in today's video. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know what you would choose in the description box, or no, in the comment section below, and let's jump into it. Okay, let's start with Urban Decay. So I do have a couple of Urban Decay palettes in my collection. The majority of them are Naked palettes, and not the original Naked palettes, but like the updated versions, like Naked Cherry, Naked Honey, and then I have a couple of other ones like Born to Run. The one palette that I would choose when it comes to Urban Decay would be the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. For some reason, this is just one of my favorite palettes, and I always kind of break it back out during the summertime. I think it might be because this was like their first updated Naked palette, and it just made warm tone shadows a little bit more approachable. This came out when warm tones were so popular, and I don't wear a lot of super orangey or red toned looks these days, but when I do want to wear one of those, this palette is perfect because the shadows are not too intense. It kind of allows you to play with those warmer tones without going overboard, and what I love about this palette is that all of the shadows work so well together. I know a lot of people say some of the shades are a little bit too similar, and I can definitely see that, but I think that's why I enjoy it, because sometimes it's hard to know which shades to pair together, but when it comes to this palette, you can use any of the shades together and get a very beautiful blended eyeshadow look. And the formula is great. It's one of their best palettes in my opinion. So if I could only choose one Urban Decay palette, this is definitely the one that I would pick. When it comes to my Anastasia palettes, it's a little bit more of a difficult choice because I love all of my Anastasia palettes. I love Soft Glam. Norvina is beautiful. I almost chose Sultry because Sultry is definitely one of my staple palettes, and there are so many gorgeous essential colors in there. But when it comes down to it, I have to pick the Jackie Aina palette because this is my favorite palette. There are so many gorgeous colors in here, and they did such a great job with the quality. The shadows perform perfectly. The matte shadows are so rich and intense, and the metallic shadows, of course, are so vibrant and beautiful. You can do more of a simple toned down neutral look, but typically when I use this palette, I get a very vibrant, intense eyeshadow look, which is why I do love using it, because not only is your look super intense and vibrant, the shadows blend out so easily. And typically when you do a more colorful, vibrant look, sometimes shadows just don't blend out that well, but this is so easy and effortless to use, and it's definitely my favorite Anastasia palettes and just one of my favorite palettes of all time, so I had to go with this one. So I do have a few palettes from Dominique Cosmetics. I have the Berries and Cream palette, which was my first palette from the brand. I also have the Latte 2 palette, but the palette that I chose was the Celestial Thunder palette. So I actually got this in a BoxyCharm. It's kind of like a mini version of one of her full-size palettes. She does have a palette called Celestial Storm, and this came in my BoxyCharm box. It's missing 4 of the shades, so it's very similar to the full-size palette. I'm just missing a couple of shades from it, but I would still choose this one because this is my favorite out of the 3. I just think it's so unique and different from the other 2 palettes that I own from the brand. You get a good mix of cool tones and warm tones, and honestly, I would like the full-size version of this palette. I just can't justify buying it because I have this mini version and I'm just missing a couple of shades, but these shades all work really well together. You can get a super intense warm look or do something a little bit cooler, and I just think Dominique Cosmetics shadows do perform very well. They're all very easy to work with, and again, for more colorful shadows, they do blend out really well. So this is definitely the one that I would choose. I think it's a great palette. So I actually only have 2 palettes from NATASHA Denona. I have tried 2 of her mini palettes, so overall I've tried 4 palettes total, but because it is more of an expensive brand, I thought I would still share my #1 choice out of the 2 that I own. So I have the Sunrise palette, and then I also have the Love palette, and out of those 2, I would definitely choose the Love palette. First of all, I do love both of these palettes, but I think the E.L.F. palette is more consistent in terms of quality. In the Sunrise palette, there are a few shadows that aren't great in my opinion, and for the price point, I want all of the shadows to perform really well. But on top of that, I just like the colors in this palette a little bit better. If you like pinks and purples and even some red tones, you are going to love this palette. It is so gorgeous, and every single time I use it, I love how my eyes turn out. There's so much going on in this palette. Not only are there gorgeous shadows, but there are so many pretty finishes. There are matte shadows, there are some creamy mattes, metallic shimmers. There's just a lot happening. And I honestly love how these shadows look on the eyes. Not only do I like using this palette on its own, but I love pulling in like 1 or 2 shadows from this palette and mixing it with another eyeshadow palette, because there's something about the shades in here that just looks so smooth and beautiful and gorgeous on the eyes. So out of the two, this is the one that I would choose. I don't regret this purchase at all. I do have a few palettes from Dose of Colors. The majority of the palettes that I have from the brand are like the 5-pan matte palettes. I have Making Mauves. I also have a cooler toned one, a warmer toned one, but there are a couple of other palettes from the brand that I've tried. And my absolute favorite probably won't come as a surprise if you watch my videos, and that would be the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. This is just one of my favorite palettes of all time. It comes with 5 matte shadows, 5 metallic shadows. The metallic formula is so interesting and so different from anything else that I've tried that even though I've had this palette in my collection for a few years, I haven't discovered anything that's quite like it. Whenever I wear this palette in a video, a lot of people know what it is right away because it's such a unique palette. And then the fact that it's paired with like some staple matte neutrals is perfect because you can create so many different looks using it. There's just so much that you can do with it. So I love using this one on its own, but I love taking the metallic shadows and placing them all over the lid after I use another palette because they are just so eye-catching and interesting. And it's definitely the best palette that Dose of Colors has done in my opinion. So if I could only choose one Juvia's Place, I think I would choose a more unique palette. Juvia's Place is not a brand that I reach for every single day because I feel like the matte shadows are a little bit more difficult to work with, but the metallic shadows are so gorgeous. So the palette that I chose was the Tribe palette. I do have quite a few Juvia's Place palettes. Some are more toned down, some are more colorful, but this one is so interesting. And again, I don't have any palettes like this in my collection. So to be completely honest with you guys, I don't reach for the top row a whole lot, but I definitely use the other 6 shadows in here. The 3 metallics are duochrome, so they just transform your eye look. You can layer them on top of matte shadows, on top of other metallics, and they're so eye-catching. I love a good duochrome, so those are just so pretty. And then the other shades are just so rich and intense, and you can create so many interesting looks using this palette that you can't create with other palettes. So I would definitely go with this one. It's not my most reach for Juvia's Place palette, but it's definitely my most interesting. So my favorite Too Faced eyeshadow palettes are the Chocolate Bar palettes, and they are an older release, but if I still had them in my collection, I would totally choose those. The original one, the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette, and the Chocolate Bonbons. I did declutter them from my collection because they were getting really old, and the shadows definitely expired, but if I could only choose one, I think that I might choose the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette if I still had it. Either that or Chocolate Bonbons. But because I don't have those palettes, I did choose a different one, and I chose a more updated palette. This one is the Too Faced Born This Way, the Natural Nudes palette. I actually think this is one of the best palettes that Too Faced has done in a few years, and it is a neutral palette. When you first look at it, it kind of looks like all of the other neutral palettes on the market, but there's something that's different about this one. There are 2 different formulas in this palette. The matte shadows are very lightweight. They're really silky and blendable, so they're great for everyday wear because it takes 2 seconds to blend the shadow onto the lid, but the metallic shadows are different. They're almost like this textured foiled metallic. They feel a little bit dry, a little bit gritty, so that's probably not going to appeal to a lot of people. I know a lot of people like a good smooth metallic like NATASHA DENONA, Juvia's Place, and if that's you, I would probably skip over this one. But if you like something a little bit different, maybe like the metallic shadows and the Dose of Colors Friendcation, you might enjoy this formula. They are a little bit more difficult to work with, but typically I'll just take my finger and kind of work them onto the eye, and once they're on the eye, like once I take the time to really blend them out, it's so worth it in the end because they look so interesting. If you look down or if like the light hits your eyes in a different way, it just looks very multi-dimensional, and it looks like you took the time to mix different shadows, apply glitter, maybe do something a little bit extra rather than just applying one shadow all over the lid. So I think for me, that's that's the reason why I like this palette so much. I have so many formulas in my collection that it takes a lot for a shadow to be interesting and unique, and I think they did it with this one. It is a little bit more of an expensive palette, but if you're somebody who wears these shades over and over, you'll probably get quite a bit of use out of this one. It's great. I brought it with me when we went out of town one weekend, and I was able to create quite a few different looks using it. So for a neutral palette, I love this one because it's like an amped up neutral palette. So ColourPop eyeshadow palettes make up the majority of my eyeshadow palette collection. I actually filmed a video where I shared the 10 palettes that I would choose if I could only keep 10, which does sound a little bit excessive, but because I have so many ColourPop palettes, I wanted to narrow it down. Now, if I could only choose one, that would be such a hard choice. It really would, because there are so many that I love for so many different reasons. But if it came down to it, I would totally pick the ColourPop Bare Necessities palette. This is a larger palette, and I don't typically love large eyeshadow palettes. I have very few in my collection, but I've kept this one because it is definitely a staple for me. We went out of town at the end of 2019 for Christmas. We were visiting family. I think we were gone for almost 2 weeks, and this is the only palette that I brought with me because it has everything that you need. It does have some warm tones, it has some cooler tones, but I think overall it's very neutral in undertone. So it's not overly warm toned or overly cool toned, and you just get a mix of so many colors. Now, if you have a large eyeshadow palette collection, there's a good chance you have shades very similar to these in other palettes. But if you're more of a minimalist or you like everything in one palette, this is going to be such a great choice for you because you really do get everything that you need. Now, you don't get a lot of super colorful tones in here. If you want a more unique large palette from ColourPop, the So Jaded palette is great for that reason, but you definitely get basic staples, whether you want to do something a little bit more natural or something a little bit more intense and smoky. So e.l.f. actually has so many different palettes and formulas, but if I had to narrow it down, without a doubt, I would choose my bite-sized eyeshadow palettes. I actually went so far as to pick one of them. I only have 2 in my collection, but I did place an order for the other shades that I don't have because I've been raving about these so much on my channel, but I want to test out the other ones to see if the quality is the same. So the one that I chose is their bite-sized eyeshadow in Cream and Sugar. It comes with 2 matte shadows and 2 metallics, and it is a neutral palette. I use this one all the time, and if I throw in my bronzer, I'll do like a bronzer in the crease, and then I have everything that I need for like a staple neutral look. I can go a little bit lighter with this shade, a little bit darker with this shade. The brown is perfect. It's so rich and intense. You can use it as a liner or use it to deepen up the outer corner, and I just enjoy this little quad. It's $3, it's perfect, and I would definitely pick this one. It's the best formula that e.l.f. has done. So when it comes to Tarte, I have purchased a few of their palettes over the years. I haven't purchased any in a while, and I think it's because their formulas are very hit and miss for me. I have tried some that I've loved, and I've tried some that haven't been that great, but my #1 Tarte palette would definitely be the Clay Play palette. Unfortunately, this isn't available. They do have a different version. I think it's called the Clay Play 2. And I've been tempted to purchase that one over the years because it does look very similar to this one, but it's a little bit different. This one is a completely matte palette. Mine looks like such a mess. Mine just looks like a complete mess. The shadows are pretty powdery, but I reach for this all the time. It's definitely getting a little bit older, and I will be so sad when I have to declutter this one when it expires because the shadows are so good. Everything is a matte finish, and sometimes you just want staple matte neutral shadows, and this palette is perfect because you get such a variety. You get a warmer toned quad, a cooler toned quad, and then a true neutral quad. It also comes with some bronzers and contour shades on the bottom. I think the Clay Play 2 palette has a blush and a highlighter in it, and instead of being a completely matte palette, it does have some metallics. So I don't know why they discontinued this one and created that one. Maybe this one wasn't selling very well, but I think there's always room for good matte shadows in anyone's collection. If you guys have the Clay Play 2 palette, you'll have to let me know how you like it. That one's been around for a while, and again, I've been tempted to buy it on a few occasions, but I just figured since I have this one, I never needed that one, but this is definitely the Tarte palette that I would choose to keep out of all of them. Okay guys, that is the end of my video. Those are all of the palettes that I would keep from these brands. Let me know in the comment section below which palettes you would keep from these brands or some of your other favorites. I would love to know, especially if you have a bunch of palettes from one brand like I do with ColourPop. Let me know which one is your favorite. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you very soon with a new video. Bye.